to the ballot. So we never, if you're not involved in the deliberative session, you never really get to see what the actual original wording was, right? It just goes what the deliberative came up with. That's right. Okay.
Everybody follow that?
Yeah,
I thought it was the other. I thought that you couldn't change a warrant article that was petitioned by a citizen in the town.
Well, the form of government and the particulars that we have is when it's presented and it comes through the council can't change it. They can make minor textual and editorial changes if there's a wording thing that doesn't make it consistent, but they can't change anything that changes the intent. When it goes to deliberative session, as Mr. Scanlin, reported to us, a small group of people can in fact change the entire article. They can do away with it. They can change the amount to 0. They can change the wording to see if. And the voters who are actually going to be asked to vote to approve that particular thing by the petitioners would never see the original intended article. At town meeting, they will see at least a presentation of the original intended article before any amendment could ever be made, no matter what the amendment. So then it becomes a floor debate at town meeting. The other way, the deliberative session could take the floor debate completely out of it. Unless there were enough people, if there's 0 quorum, then 15 people could rule the day at deliberative session. If there was 250 quorum, 300 quorum, whatever that number might be, then it's a floor debate that takes place at the deliberative session to adopt the amendments. Chris?
Isn't everything published prior to the deliberative session? So if you're going to, with the budget, anything that's going to be on the deliberative session and on the town meeting or the election in March, isn't it all published prior to the deliberative session? It is for the school?
It is published.
So everybody has an opportunity to read it as...
to get it at the deliberative, I think. It's not published as the official warrant. It's information you get at the
But the warrant that's being presented at the deliberative session isn't published.
Yeah, I mean, it's all, so you've got information. You can't go to the deliberative session with no information.
Right.
Or even, if you're going to the town council, or to the town meeting in March.
But that's the
there.
published warrant article. That is the published article, the one you go to town.
But the intent, if somebody had a warrant article that they were bringing up, that would be published prior to the deliberative session. So as a town person, if you saw it, you could read it and understand what it was, and then go to the deliberative session or not. But at least at that point, you would have what it was, the original intent, and then what it was changed to for the ballot voting.
Right.
Is that correct?
The key difference is that when you're actually given the opportunity to vote
Right.
on it,
But you could still see the intent
You'd
prior
still-
to the deliberative session.
you would have had an opportunity to
Right.
affect that warrant's language as it would appear on the ballot.
Okay.
You could have gone to the meeting or not gone to the meeting, as you said. Just Marty?
Yeah, right now, welcome, thank you for coming, David. Right now, at a town meeting, when you take a vote, normally, whether it passes or fails, someone now makes a motion to restrict reconsideration in regards to that particular piece. And that's come as a process. A lot of people still don't understand what that's about, but that's because in the old days, 300 people would show up for the meeting at 7 o'clock at night, and by 10 o'clock there was like 20 people left, and they would take the motion up again and change it. And so people leaving thought that they had one thing, and when they got it, it was something totally different. In the deliberative session, is that process still available to people? Can you still ask for reconsideration to, no reconsideration? Or can you ask for it? I mean, that's something that's important here, because if it can be changed with no quorum, and we have 300 people show up for that deliberative session, and come 10 o'clock at night, and you're down to 20 with no quorum, it could be changed. So that is a concern that I have.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid concern. It could happen. Towns, through their moderator, usually operate under a unique set of rules of procedure, and sometimes it's based on Robert's Rules of Order. It may be the moderator just has his or her own set of rules that they announce before the meeting starts. And if the moderator permits that or if the town meeting says that we want to do it this way or don't want to do it this way, that's the determining factor on whether it's a valid parliamentary procedure or not.
So beyond what we do here in our recommendation, it's still going to be, what's the right word, influenced or directed by what the moderator, whoever the moderator may be, decides how they want to run that meeting?
The moderator runs the meeting with the permission of the voters in attendance. It's the voters that actually decide how the meeting is run because they can overrule the moderator. Typically, the moderator, though, is the one that comes up with the initial set of rules and says that without objection, this is the way this meeting is going to be run. That's subject to a vote of the town.
And even after that, there can be a motion to overrule the moderator.
Right.
So if 300 people said yes to something and at the end of the meeting there were 20 and they wanted to reconsider something, the moderator could say, no, we're not going to allow that. The 20 people can vote to overrule the moderator.
But again,
If people had, I don't know at what point that would be considered a legal or an illegal motion, but I would assume that the same motion could be made after a vote to restrict reconsideration. And if the vote of that one approves that, then no amount of people can come in and change it later.
There are some provisions in the statute that deal with reconsideration motions made at town meetings as well. And I'm not that up to speed on it, but there may be some restrictions where the motion could be made, but the item may have to be taken up at a subsequent date. But I can research that and get back to Al with the information that I find out.
Chris, you had your hand up.
Just getting back to what she had brought up about the articles being published before the deliberative. I mean, aren't there any laws that that say that the articles have to be published and made available to the public a certain amount of days before the deliberative?
Yes. Yeah. The warrant and the articles on the warrant have to be posted well in advance of the deliberative session, which is actually the first part of the town meeting. And then the process after that is just like a traditional town meeting. That whatever the outcome of the discussion is put in the form of a question and then voted on. So if you amend an article at a traditional town meeting, after going through the process of the debate, the moderator finally says, okay, this is the way the final article reads, and then there's an up or down vote on it. Basically, the same thing is happening with SB2. It's just that instead of taking a voice vote or a hand vote or whatever,
Goes to the voters.
it's put on the ballot. The final question is put on the ballot for the people to vote on.
Yeah, Dave, with your experience here dealing with the SB2 at the state level, are there more and more towns, because I know there's only a handful, like on our school side, that have a quorum. And when I'm hearing a high percentage of the towns have no quorum, are you seeing more and more towns going SB2?
There was after SB2 passed the legislature in the mid-90s, there was a rush of towns to implement that new process. That has tailed off quite a bit since the 3 or 4 years after that passed. So there are still towns that are attempting to implement SB2, but it's not the big rush that we saw early on. There have been a few towns that have tried to undo SB2 and just go back to traditional town meeting. There may be 1 or 2 of those that were successful, but there are not a lot of towns that are trying to reverse what they put into place.
So I'll ask questions of the public in a few minutes, as soon as the Charter Commission members are all finished. Dave, would you say that within the Charter Commission's duties, and that's really part of the thing that we're talking about here, is that we have the ability to recommend with a quorum or without a quorum the change to SB2? When we take our vote, are we within our charter, within our responsibilities, able to take a vote to recommend with a quorum.